Okay, just so you know, we just went live on YouTube. So Valerie and Alejandro, we're ready to get going whenever you are.
All right.
Welcome and thank you again for joining us for the New Orleans Municipal Investor Webinar. And now please welcome Alejandra Guzman.
Thank you, Valerie. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Alejandra Guzman, Vice President of Real Estate and Capital Investments with the New Orleans Business Alliance, and we're the official economic development partner for the City of New Orleans. And it is our absolute pleasure to be co-hosting this webinar with the Finance New Orleans organization. We have brought a great lineup of speakers today who will walk us through different opportunities available in New Orleans. We will feature topics such as opportunity zones, environmental impact zones, and the New Orleans Green Deal, among other very interesting topics. But before we start, let me share some housekeeping items. First, to be respectful of everybody's time, we have allocated a Q&A section towards the end of this program, so make sure to use the chat feature in Zoom to ask your questions. Also, just to give you a heads up, we have structured our program in a way to give a presentation and then have a brief conversation with our moderator of the day, Bo Kemp. So I'm sure this program will be helpful for you and be very easygoing and entertaining. With this, I'll hand it over to our two first speakers of today who will be providing welcoming remarks. And we'd like to start with Norman Barnum, who is CFO of the New Orleans Business Alliance, followed by Damon Ward, who is CEO of Finance New Orleans. So welcome, Norman and Damon, and we'd like to hand it over to you for welcoming remarks.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be on the call this morning and have the opportunity to share our vision for New Orleans and our approach to how we can ignite development in our opportunity zones. This has been an ongoing effort since the tax regulation was imparted in 2017. And it's now the opportunity for us to show both the individual investors, corporate investors, and entrepreneurs alike that New Orleans is open for business. We have a firm strategy for opportunity zones, and we have a pathway to ignite the development that is so desperately needed in those communities. Damon?
Thank you, Norman. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you here. We're happy to have your attention. As Norman said, we're here to show you what we have planned in New Orleans. We have a big vision for the future of New Orleans. We're working on one accord. NOLA BA and Finance New Orleans are two separate agencies, but we both represent the best for New Orleans. We both want the best, so we're working together. We're combining efforts, and not only are we doing that as individual agencies, but across the board. Led by the City of New Orleans and other local agencies, we're working together to solve the problems that we see in New Orleans. NOLA BA comes at it from one angle and Finance New Orleans comes at it from another, but with our combined efforts, we think we can make a great impact in the city. So we're excited that we have you today. We're excited to express to you what our plans are, and we hope that you stay with us until the future, until we accomplish those goals. So this is a first step in a bright direction as we see it, and we're excited about this agenda. So without further ado, we'll move forward with the agenda. We do have time allotted for Q&A, so we expect this to be interactive, but we also want to be mindful of your time. So we're going to manage a tight ship, but also have some involvement from the audience. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thank you, Norman and Damon. And we now want to welcome our good partner, Ellen Lee. Ellen serves as Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of New Orleans, and she will provide us with some valuable insight of the state of New Orleans. Before we start, I want to give you just a brief summary of what Ellen has accomplished. She has a wealth of experience in both the public and nonprofit sector, and she's currently, as I mentioned, serving as Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of New Orleans. And in this role, she serves as advisor for Mayor LaToya Cantrell and provides policy direction and management for the department's programmatic initiatives. Thank you, Ellen, for being here today, and most especially, thank you so much for your continuous partnership. And we love working with you and your team to support our citizens. So thank you, Ellen. I'll hand it over to you for your presentation.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Alejandra, for those very kind remarks. Welcome, everyone. Welcome virtually to New Orleans if you are joining us from other parts of the world. On behalf of Mayor LaToya Cantrell, I am delighted that you are interested in learning more about what is happening on the ground in New Orleans and what the opportunities are for partnership and investment. You know, we are going to hear a lot about opportunity zones and ways that you can invest and partner with us to help rebuild and continue to build New Orleans, and build it in ways that make us more resilient, that improve opportunities for access to capital, opportunities for, excuse me, workforce development and career pathways, opportunities for more affordable housing and housing that is in thriving mixed income communities, communities that not only have safe and quality housing, but communities that are in close proximity to jobs, that have businesses that support them, and that are supported by infrastructure that helps us to manage water and manage our other natural resources that make us more resilient and sustainable. You know, to that end, I would say we're all about partnerships. The mayor speaks it, she walks it, and she talks partnership. And we couldn't have any better partners working alongside us than Finance New Orleans and the New Orleans Business Alliance. As Norman and Damon have both said, they've been with us all along, walking this path. And one part that we're most proud of and most pleased with is not only that they are partners, but that we're always looking to build capacity, to expand the tools in the toolkit, to shake off the rust and the dust of any tools that had been in the toolkit that hadn't been activated, so that we put everything on the table, so that we're all in. So want you to know about our commitment to doing everything that we can so that you know that as an investor, you have partners that are as deeply committed to the success of the projects that we're involved in as you will be as an investor. I will talk about the tens of millions of dollars that have been invested in affordable housing from the city's perspective in partnership with the state local housing finance agency, using our own resources through HUD and through local millages. We have affordable housing and mixed income housing developments, rental housing, homeownership housing throughout the city of New Orleans. We are super excited about the new ability of our finance authority to issue mortgage revenue bonds and to issue payments in lieu of taxes pilots as an option to help us with filling gaps and expanding our ability to create the housing that our residents really need, both our longtime residents and to attract new residents to New Orleans. I would certainly be remiss if I did not talk about the billions of dollars of FEMA funding and other federal funding that the city of New Orleans is currently spending and has to spend over the next 5 to 10 years to make infrastructure improvements to our roads, improvements in commercial corridors, and in some of these opportunity zone sites that are going to make those locations even more attractive for development, knowing, again, that we are fighting for more resilient communities, that we are less prone to damages around flooding and climate and other rain and weather-related events. Opportunities to grow our businesses and attract new business to New Orleans, federal opportunities, as well as state and local opportunities to grow businesses, not just the big businesses that are going to attract thousands of jobs, but what we know is, like many cities, focusing on neighborhoods and strategic corridors where we're going to be able to make investments, that can be a win-win, where we can serve neighborhoods, serve our residents, and also see a return on investment for not only the businesses who are located here, but for all of you as investors who are partnering with us. So I would say that, these are the opportunities that we have. We've got nearly 24 opportunity zones within the city of New Orleans. I know we're going to talk a lot about a specific opportunity today that we think is really ripe for investment, but know that not only from what you're going to hear today, but know that what you're going to be available to hear more about in the future, I think is exciting for the future of New Orleans and exciting for you as investors to walk along with us and in this journey of continuing to make New Orleans, the best city she can be and really one of the best cities in the world. So thank you so much for being here and for your time. And thank you to NOLA BA and Finance New Orleans for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about what's happening in New Orleans and how excited Mayor Cantrell is to have you all join us today.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for highlighting the importance of partnerships. I think that the audience that is here today will be able to attest that the group of people that are here today are our partners, and that is something that we value and consider important for making the city thrive. So with this, we're gonna go to Kamlesh Pila's presentation. He's a representative of C40. We're thrilled to have him today and bring this international component to our presentation. To give you more context, please know that the City of New Orleans has had the pleasure of collaborating with C40 in numerous capacities. For those who are not familiar with C40, this is a network of the world's mega cities committed to addressing climate change. And today we'll hear from Kamlesh Pila, who will present one of the ways C40 has been collaborating with our city. He's based in Cape Town and is part of the Financing Sustainable Initiative team for C40. And he brings extensive experience in climate adaptation finance. And in addition to that, he's also finishing a PhD in adaptation finance. So we're lucky to have him here today, and we are very much looking forward to your presentation. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Alejandra. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, it's coming up. Great. I think everybody should be able to see this. Well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here from Cape Town. So good morning to everyone in New Orleans and in the States. So I'll just start off by giving a brief overview of something that we're working together with FNO and the City of New Orleans on, that is really envisioned to be a strategic framework for the city to pursue green financing options. Given the new nature of green finance and really the exploratory nature of some of the instruments and approaches that are currently available, FNO approached C40 with this opportunity to work together to try and develop this framework to ensure that it is aligned with the city's vision and mission, and also with the current policy documents and strategies that are available that have already been undertaken in the past. So my presentation is just going to be a short overview of what we aim to accomplish. We're in the process of obviously delivering this, apologies for that. We're in the process of delivering this document for the city, and I'll just speak about the process that we've undertaken to this point and what will be coming in the next few months. So can I just request that the next slide be put up? Great. So this is just an overview of some of the strategic frameworks that have been used for green financing frameworks. The Green Deal is a strategic document, but it does have specific implementation goals that the city is looking to achieve in in conjunction with FNO. So on your left-hand side, you'll see a diagram which really represents the UN framing of sustainable finance. And that really has 4 strategic goals, and that is really the ability to use the public balance sheet and also leveraging private finance through policy, but also transforming the culture that we explore green financing through, and ultimately delivering a coherent marketplace that allows for green to prosper. Through our engagements with the different city agencies and the city itself, we have obviously created themes that the Green Deal will be pursued under. And of course, it includes sustainability and green economic development and climate change. But one of the really important parts is social equity. And that really is the undertone of the entire strategy. And that really captures the need for job creation and for a smooth transition to a green future that aligns with the climate resilience strategy of the city. Next slide, please. So some of the objectives that we've already managed to pursue under the Green Deal, or are envisioned to be pursued, are really to try and create a coherent and transparent manner that the Green Deal will be pursued under, outlining some of the new strategic instruments and approaches that the city is currently being developed and that will be pursued by FNO. And lastly, to create a monitoring and evaluation framework that really measures the impact, noting that green investors are really interested in understanding the linkage between what they are financing in terms of the green impact that they are going to deliver. So we envision that as being one of the really key parts of the framework that is going to be developed under this Green Deal. Next slide, please. And this is just trying to encapsulate what the green finance framework will look at specifically within this document. Of course, it does leverage the existing financial products and approaches that have already been developed by the city, but also looking at new green financing frameworks and approaches that are really novel and that still require a lot of hand-holding to get to market. As Ellen has mentioned in her words, partnerships are really key, and we envision this to also be the case in green financing, given the novel nature and some of the learning that has already been experienced in other parts of the world, and trying through the C40 network to really leverage these networks for the benefit of New Orleans. And lastly, as I mentioned, transparency. So obviously this relates to the monitoring and evaluation, but given the lack of a coherent definition of what is green, we envision one of the critical parts to be the development of a green finance taxonomy, which really underpins some of the definitions of what green is and some of the sectors that will obviously be important for the city of New Orleans as we pursue the 2030 vision that is outlined in many of the strategic documents. So I'll stop there and happy to take questions. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you, Kamlasha. Well, at this point, I do want to introduce Bo, who will be moderating a couple of questions and a conversation with you directly. We have had the pleasure to be working with Bo for the last 2 years at the Business Alliance, and I can attest to his great and vast knowledge for public-private partnerships. He has more than 15 years of experience in the private equity world and has also been directly with different municipalities, including ours and across the country. And he has been helping municipalities to address some of the hardest to solve problems. He's highly experienced in structuring and executing public-private partnerships. And we are very happy, Bo, to have you here today. And obviously, we look forward to not only this conversation, but to the work ahead of us with our partnership. So thank you, Bo, for being here.
Thank you, Alejandra, and the team. I am excited to be here as well. And I think the work that you guys have been doing in the collaboration between the city and Finance New Orleans is fantastic, and really is setting New Orleans on pace to really demonstrate what is possible in this space. I'm particularly interested in the work that you've been doing, Mr. Pillay, with the C40 group, And one of the questions that I had for you was if you could talk a little bit about the experiences you've had or what you have seen done in other cities where they have really focused on this social equity aspect of how to leverage the green financing world. A couple of things that come to mind are in many cities, you'll find that the poorest folks will live in those areas that are substantially brownfield surrounded. You'll see situations where they lack a lot of the kind of resilience infrastructure that's necessary to deal with issues of climate change. Can you just provide some examples of how you've seen other cities or work that you may have been doing directly that help to address those issues and using that effort to address those issues as a way to attract either additional residents and citizens to the area or businesses?
Great, thank you for that, Bo. Yes, I mean, I think it's the case with adaptation and resiliency in general. So I'll just talk a bit about some of the work that we've been doing in the Global South, because I think the issue of social equity really comes through in a lot of the Latin American, African, and Asian cities. Obviously, it's magnified in these cities, given the state of development. But really, it's an integration of adaptation and resilience from a social resiliency perspective within all of the financing structures. So one of the examples that I'll talk about is we've been undertaking a resilience bond issuance within some of the cities in South Africa where I'm based. And within that bond issuance, a lot of the earmarked proceeds are specifically for the community upliftment. And noting your point that individuals live with environmental issues or with climate issues. And really, you can't really address one without addressing the other. So really, it's about creating good community upliftment while addressing green issues. One of the examples within that resiliency bond is really the restoration of riverine systems or river systems to their pristine nature, given some of the pollution that is evident in some of the communities. And that's a great example of where communities can really assist in delivering the green benefit, but ultimately it is financed still through something that is focused ultimately on adaptation. So there's an interplay between climate adaptation and community upliftment in the financing structure that's built in.
So one of the things that I've seen in a lot of communities, and having had the benefit of working directly with New Orleans, is I think New Orleans is many times unfairly characterized by businesses as a place where they are worried about business continuity given particular climate issues that happen. And I think many of us have seen over the course of the last 10 years that there is not a community in America that is somehow devoid of the concerns. It may not be a hurricane, but it might be a fire, it might be a mudslide, it might be an earthquake, it might be snow. So every community is dealing with this issue of business continuity. I'm really interested in figuring out if there's a way to help position New Orleans and leverage the kind of finance and the green financing that you're doing to help specifically either support those existing businesses that are concerned about the cost of business continuity or attract businesses by making investments that really help them rethink the issues of green continuity. And obviously, you know, given all the things that have happened in the history of New Orleans, this is a really important issue in our ability to attract capital to support our projects.
Great, thanks for that, Bo, and I apologize for some of the sound issues that I'm having here. I think the one thing that we've seen in a lot of the work that we've done is just the ability of a lot of the kind of quasi-financial intermediaries to play a role in providing financing for small business development. And we see that with a lot of provision of loans at preferential coupon rates or interest rates that allow for small businesses which are focused on renewables specifically or energy efficiency to gain access to financing at lower rates, given the market development of some of these sectors. So across a lot of the C14 network, we do see this evident, where a lot of cities have realized that markets that are still in a nascent state require financing at competitive terms to be able to firstly develop the sector, and thereafter to allow the sector to prosper and ultimately achieve some of the benefits that we're talking about in terms of job creation that we need to see. So it's really something that needs to happen over time. And a lot of the cities that we work with are starting to see that it is a gradual transition that initially requires strong public sector, the public sector to play a primary role, and thereafter to let the market prosper by itself.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bo and Kamalisha, for this wonderful conversation. We now are going to move to the section of our presentation where Norman Barnum is going to present some of the projects that we're working on at the New Orleans Business Alliance. I have the pleasure to work closely with Norman at the Business Alliance. He has a wealth of experience in economic and community development, and he accumulates more than 30 years of experience in his finance field. He has developed also multiple real estate projects and raised more than 90 million in financing. He is currently serving as Chief Financial Officer for the New Orleans Business Alliance. And as I mentioned, today he's going to walk us through interesting opportunities in New Orleans that are leveraging opportunity zones. And finally, he's going to conclude with a very specific project that's also in one of our opportunity zones. So welcome, Norman, and I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Alejandra. Could I get my first slide up? While we pause at this point, I want to give some context to everybody on the call on our journey and how we got to this point. Initially, one of our strategic goals was to increase the amount of retail activity that was on the former Plaza Mall site or in that corridor. And in going through that process, what we realized is it had to be a more overarching view to make sure that we could ignite retail. And this overarching view made us look at what we called a three-pronged approach to how we identified and looked at the pros and cons in all our opportunity zones. So one of the things that was most prominent is we needed to look at the opportunity zone. We have 25 of them in Orleans Parish. This one specific, what was going to be the master vision for this particular tract? What was going to be the transactions that would be embodied within that master vision? And thirdly, what was going to be the way that we communicated this to the community and have community buy-in? So one of the things from this presentation that we hope to show the investor community is our methodology that we use for this zone and the one that we will use for all the rest of our zones to be able to market effectively to the investment community and to communicate to both the stakeholders and businesses within the tract and the community members surrounding it. This particular slide is really our decision matrix and our template on how we went about moving forward with this particular census tract, this zone specifically. To your left, you'll see the key 6 components that we were looking at. Job potential in that tract, existing assets in the tract, city-owned land, public funding, and existing area plans. And finally, I think, which is most important and what was the genesis of the opportunity zone regulation, the risk of displacement. With all of these initiatives, we want to make sure that the indigenous population, the folks that have been on the ground, will not be displaced because of the investment activity. We looked at this particular tract, we compared it to Ozone tract in Lower Ninth Ward in Algiers and said, okay, once we take this look, what gives us the greatest potential turnaround, the greatest potential investment, not just for the community, but for investors. And it was New Orleans East Track. Highest potential jobs, highest in existing assets, highest in city-owned land, although we do have some site control issues tied to those, highest with existing public funding that has already been committed, and we've had some existing plans that are already embedded. Next slide. That overview led us to this strategic look at the track. And when you look at this particular narrative or this particular picture, you can see that we have connectivity to the interstate, I-10. Reed Boulevard is a spine, a natural corridor. We've had existing investment with New Orleans East Hospital and sizable public investment in Joe Brown Park, the Audubon Nature Trail, Lake Forest Academy, Lake Forest Boulevard itself. This is a ripe opportunity. This particular track embodied everything that is about what we do at NOLA BA. We can deal with a transportation-oriented development. We can see small business creation on this footprint. We can have the ability to work with New Orleans East Hospital and other employers on our talent workforce solutions. And it allows our strategic neighborhood and development to deal not just on the footprint of this site, but the existing neighbors. This area has not had the level of investment that is necessary for it to thrive. And since Hurricane Katrina, this particular footprint has not been able to get on track. For us, this was our opportunity to demonstrate with Opportunity Zone potential investors, we have a coordinated approach. We can anchor with existing public investments, and we have the amenities around this to create what we feel is a bikeable, walkable, livable community. Next slide. And going through this process, we denoted 8 individual nodes or 8 opportunities within the footprint. I will reference later what we think is a great anchor opportunity in node 1, but as we go through each one of our nodes, you'll see consistency, the ability to have mixed use housing, hence our relationship with FANO, and to be able to make sure that we have an approach that's strategic for affordability. The ability to have hotel, lodging, mixed use office space, all these things that will be able to have density on the site that will eventually be able to ignite the retail activity and have the density for retailers to be able to want to move to this area. It's a dynamic parcel. It previously had the same type of feel. We just not been able to get the level of reinvestment back in. We feel that with these type of initiatives, this type of conversation that we're having today, private investors will see that we have a coordinated plan and the opportunity is dramatic. The other thing that I want to make sure that I express is we wanted to make sure that we anchored this with data, sound analysis. And we utilized Buxton, which is a consumer analytics firm that shows how consumer behavior will work, where the opportunity is still prevalent. This community has the resources for retailers to be established. And we felt that this made sure that data analysis, along with a firm plan of action, will give us the best opportunity to promote these sites. Next slide. We got 2 slides coming up that gives a feel for what this could look like, what the mixed use opportunities will look like, the density that could be created on the site, and the feel for community that's not there. Next slide. This is a different version. That footprint is so large, each component point or anchor can have a different contextual feel, but still builds upon the existing assets that are there. Next slide. We will be able to share this with all the participants, but this was just the overview look every one of those nodes and what could be their possibilities. And as we walk through all of them, key things, hospitality, retail projects can be in play. The ability to leverage our ozones with national franchises after we've established the density on site in play. Natural conduits for real estate leases and opportunities on space in play. The ability to attract corporate expansion and headquarters with the density that we create, with the opportunity to have a RTA transit hub there, we're starting to hit some of the key infrastructure points that these corporate headquarters or potential corporate expansion would be looking favorably upon. Next slide. I want to take a look at this one and go in a little detail. We have the investor community. You're on the call with us right now. And we want to take a look in these component points. At this point, what is our competitive advantages, where we're at in pre-development, and what are the potential funding sources to ignite this? We do have a hospital already anchored. We feel that this is a competitive advantage. It'll help us with medical professional recruitment. It does give us some way to help and assist ozone venture capital backed companies to move forward here with that anchor. And we're looking for partnership with ozone venture capital funds, social impact funds, as we start laying out the foundational story in the hospitality or the hospital sector. Same thing that I think is very important with the retail and entertainment. Once we create this density and with our access to the interstate and transportation, the potential for transportation upgrades, we feel very excited that we can then get these retailers there. Commercial tech companies, residential housing, some of the same component points are here. We have proximity to the workforce already, and we've already had significant attractive public amenities with our Joe Brown Park and Audubon Nature Institute. Next slide. In the future, potentially, this area sets up nicely for light transit or transit-oriented development. And what we want to give the investors is our look. We don't just have a 3-year look. This is a 10-year look out, what potentially could be on that site and how we integrate that and augment the possibilities that we've already presented. Next slide. Very key point for us. All of this that is on that footprint is dealing with affordability of housing, market rate housing, and why our relationship with FANO is so important. We really believe the difference between market rate and affordable housing is not that great in New Orleans East to spread. But we need to work with our partners to make sure that as we build out the site, we have the mix that is appropriate, that would not impact existing homeowners' values in the corridor. This is one of the things that we're very excited about as we move this forward, because this is a critical component in building density on the site itself. Next slide. Some of our gating issues. Site control, I would say, is one of the biggest potential issues. The one transaction that I will speak to later does not have that potential issue on it. But for us to be able to attract a master developer, we may have to deal with getting all of the sites and aggregate of the sites ready to be developed without any title issues. But as Ellen has spoke to our FEMA dollars, we do have a pipeline of infrastructure improvements. What's really needed is our streetscape for Reed Boulevard, improvements to Lake Forest Boulevard. We're dealing with the rapid transit with our RTA transit site. And this type of development, we make sure that our gateway from Slidell into the city, we do have beautification. Next slide. While we're going through this journey, these are the things that we've done right now. We've had ozone technical assistance seminars to make sure that all of the businesses and stakeholders understand the mechanics of the regulation and how to execute with them. We did an ozone investor conference and ensure that small investors are able to set up their individual funds to execute and benefit from the reg. We've proposed a HUD grant dealing with a surrounding Bundy apartment area. And we've already received, working with GRI, a EDA grant relative to social equity, baseline resilience, and resiliency in the corridor. Next slide. Very big. Recommended funds. We think this potential footprint, we have to have a fund mix for ozones. Real estate opportunity zone funds to deal with the real estate assets. Community investment ozone funds to ignite or allow community members to share or be a part of the redevelopment. Incubator funds, which I really feel our relationship with FANO will help work in the green space, and intellectual property funds, making sure that we can work along with New Orleans East Hospital to try to attract high-tech and bio businesses in the corridor. Next slide. This is the last that I have to share with you. We do have a transaction in our pipeline that was tied to Node 1, a potential movie studio in the former Lowe's site. This particular transaction would be a $60 million investment, and we really feel we could ignite the rest of the development in the corridor. Next slide. Finally, an overview of the corridor itself and its proximity to our existing assets. Very happy that we feel we can bring this to the investor community and show the real possibilities for the corridor. Last slide.
Thank you, Norman. I want to highlight a couple of points Norman mentioned, and that is one of them is our master plan mindset. We understand that communities, to be able to thrive, there needs to be multiple projects simultaneously, and both from the public and the private sector, obviously. We obviously value partnerships and the use of consumer data to elaborate and implement our projects. And finally, but not least, we make sure we have community involvement to obtain buy-in. That is really important for everything that we do. So with this, we're going to move to a brief conversation with Bo and Norman. And I also want to remind the audience that we do have a Q&A section towards the end of our presentations. So make sure to include your questions in the chat box, and we'll make sure to include them during that section. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Alejandra and Norman, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. You know, one of the things I think has been difficult for a lot of cities or neighborhoods and folks that have been focused on the opportunity zone aspect is to figure out how to attract money to those areas that were not the easiest to develop right away, right? So there's a lot of areas in New Orleans that there are opportunity zone investments that are happening that are easier to do because those projects were already underway. I think one of the things that's most interesting about the Lake Forest Plaza, Plaza Mall, Lake Forest Boulevard area that you've chosen is it's an area that might not have been the easiest, but it has so many of the elements that you need to be successful. Just talk a little bit about how you've tried to structure your process, the resulting kind of marketing material effectively to use as a way to attract businesses of all different types, right? Folks that might be investing in infrastructure, those who might be interested in housing, those businesses, both big and small, who might either want to be there for retail, for the hospital aspects, or other things like the movie studio. And just talk a little bit about how you've structured yourself to market to all of those types of investors to bring them together in the Lake Forest Boulevard area.
Thank you, Bo. I think one of the first things that Alejandra and I looked at as we were going through the process is we had to reintroduce the community to the investors, to the retailers. And what was going to be the method to reintroduce them? It was through the data. And so our data analysis in the corridor, utilizing Buxton, really gave a definitive look on the consumer profiles in the area. And when we look through those consumer profiles, who is the community and what is their makeup? And the perception that was of New Orleans East did not bear out with the data points that we found. And I think that was the beginning for us to create the narrative that we needed to move forward with, that would begin the conversation with specific retail. But then when we started to broaden off of retail, how do we increase the conversation with commercial brokers that would not just be retail specific? And what was going to be the narrative relative to industry? And when we went down that road, the master plan approach was very apparent, because depending upon the sector or the interest, our narrative needed to be tweaked. So the ability to anchor upon existing assets spoke to the investor community that was not involved with retail, but was looking for potential availability or opportunities in hospital or medical. How do we leverage New Orleans East Hospital in that in that narrative? And what it led us to is we do have a bio district embedded in an opportunity zone in another area of New Orleans. But we could create the same dynamic within this zone if we anchor effectively with New Orleans East Hospital and working with FANO and the city, create incentives that are very closely aligned to the strategic strengths of a bio district in a zone itself. And so, Bo, I think what it is, it's an ongoing conversation and an ongoing tweak, but it has to be a reimagining and repositioning that corridor from what the perception was after Katrina.
Great, thank you, Norman.
Thank you, Norman and Bo. I do want to drill down in Norman's statement that we have very powerful tools within our reach to evaluate consumer profiles. And not only that, we have the capability of geofencing properties to evaluate real-time consumer behavior. So if anybody is interested in that type of analysis, make sure to go to noava8.org to find out what our contact information is, and we'll be happy to discuss this and obviously discuss additional details on the investment opportunities. So thank you, Norman and Bo, again. And we now are going to go with Laura Dretcher. She's Senior Associate of Quantified Ventures and has a wealth of experience in managing diverse group of stakeholders to help them reach their resiliency goals. She's currently supporting a variety of programs around green infrastructure, outdoor recreation, and coastal resiliency. And to give you additional context and also support the idea of how important partnerships are, Quantified Venture has been working with the Finance Authority to study environmental impact bonds and other financial instruments that can be used to finance green infrastructure and other resiliency measures. We will hear more about this directly from Laura. So thank you, Laura, for being here, and we look very much forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. So I just wanted to introduce our firm first. You all might be more familiar with some of the other panelists. So I'm going to talk about the work we've been doing with Finance New Orleans to launch a green mortgage program. But on the next slide, you'll see a little intro to my firm, Quantified Ventures. So we are an outcomes-based capital firm. We're trying to structure different solutions that bring capital to create real health, social, and environmental impacts. So we're a very mission-driven company. We're looking to develop projects or structure financing based on an outcomes-based approach, right? So we're really interested in not only the intent, but also the impact that generates. And on the next slide, you'll see a few examples of our projects where we work. So Quantified Ventures works across 4 different practice areas. The most relevant probably for today's conversation is our urban and coastal resilience practice. We also work in forestry and land use, agriculture, and health and human services. And you can see from some of the example projects listed that typically a lot of our projects are very transactional, right? Alejandra mentioned an environmental impact bond that's issued like a municipal bond, but has some tracking and maybe some performance payment based around outcomes attached to it. And several of our other projects are like that, where we're structuring or working to scope out the structuring of such a transaction. And with our partnership with Finance New Orleans, has really taken on a bigger and broader approach. We're really working with them to support their vision, which I'm so excited for you all to hear more about later. But taking a more long-term approach beyond an initial transaction to thinking about how do they really grow their operating model while still staying focused on impact and the impact that they want to generate in the community. So if you go to the next slide, I can introduce this green mortgage program, bringing resilience to housing. We're working with our partners at Finance New Orleans to launch this program. So for folks who might not be familiar, a green mortgage is really just additional capital to the borrower. There are existing products out there on the market. They're mostly focused around energy efficiency. So the idea is a borrower can afford to borrow more money if they then have more discretionary income because they're saving money from these energy efficiency retrofits they're doing on their home. But we're working with Finance New Orleans to slightly update that model. So one of the needs that they've noted is the need for additional down payment assistance, and then money for other resilience or sustainability retrofits. So not only energy efficiency, but also solar installation, fortified roofing, and capturing and diverting stormwater from the city's pumping system. And we're also working, we've used, green mortgage program, and we are going to, create a product around that key offering of Finance New Orleans. We're also exploring ways that we can use maybe an unsecured loan to provide capital for folks who don't need a mortgage, already have a mortgage, and are just looking for capital that can create real impact. And we've been working with some key partners there that you see on the slide. So on the next slide, just to reiterate some of the goals for this program of Finance New Orleans, right? So we're starting with making financing available, the down payment assistance, but also, some extra capital for those retrofits or resilient infrastructure. We're working, or Finance New Orleans is working to make that available on an accessible platform. So making sure it's an efficient process, and Finance New Orleans is a great partner for the community to engage with. So we're, that's leading to both increased home ownership and more resilient homes, right? So we're enabling people to get into the homes with down payment assistance, but also giving folks the capital to make the homes more resilient, which in turn makes them, more resilient or less vulnerable to some of the changes that Ellen Lee was speaking about earlier, that the New Orleans community is going through. So the way we're doing this, we're thinking about this, using funding and financing from multiple sources. So we're working with Finance New Orleans' financial advisors, Kane Mitter, to look at the potential to both initiate, but then also grow different revenue streams over time to support and scale not only this program, but some of the other programs that Finance New Orleans is considering, which I'll mention a little later in the presentation. So we're looking at, of course, sale of mortgage-backed securities. I think Ellen mentioned the payment in lieu of taxes program. That's going to be key to scaling this up. Finance New Orleans is looking at the ability to do conduit issuing for smaller projects, which could provide another revenue stream. And then we're also, building on these partnerships, looking for opportunities for service fees and revenue sharing through partnerships. So through groups that are implementing those changes through contractors? Can we, capture some of that and track that impact? And of course, important to the audience that we have on today, growing those revenue streams and accumulating a critical volume will mean that there's more ability to securitize them. So we're also building into the operating model that future vision to continue and to grow and scale the program. So what's the impact? We're an impact-focused company, and so it's a perfect fit for Finance New Orleans. They're focused on creating this impact in the community. So they have some strategic goals around 1,500 homeowners with more resilience homes, but also, like I mentioned, decreased vulnerability. We're looking at retrofits that can capture or divert over 220 million gallons of stormwater and reduce over 57,000 metric tons of carbon. So we're working closely with the Finance New Orleans team to make sure we can measure and quantify that impact that C40 mentioned is so important in building that bigger green finance framework. So this last slide, I believe this is the last slide, gives a heads up about some of the future work that we're hoping to do with Finance New Orleans, right? So we have single family housing, we're looking to grow those revenues. Like I mentioned, connecting with existing homeowners as well as new homeowners who are seeking a mortgage, right? So making sure we have a couple different products there. We're excited to start working with Finance New Orleans on the multifamily housing. So looking at the market and developer economics, integrating that into the financial model that we're building, and then determine the mechanisms for attracting the private capital that's needed there to really scale that up. For resilience, I should say, we're focusing on, how do we stimulate this market, but also make sure that overall, housing stock, commercial properties, municipal buildings are more energy efficient, more resilient, more sustainable. So the other two sectors that are listed here about commercial properties, looking at that pipeline and looking at the gap that's often needed in retrofitting commercial properties, and then working with the city on their existing pipeline of municipal buildings that could use energy efficiency upgrades and developing loans that can then be repaid based on the savings that the upgrades generate. So I'm happy to take questions in the chat. I know we have a Q&A later in the session, and I just thanks for the opportunity to join you all here today.
Thank you, Laura. We welcome back Boken for a brief conversation with you about this topic.
Hi, Laura. Great presentation. And I know we're short on time, so I probably only get to ask one question until we get to Q&A. But my question for you is this. One of the things you see in a lot of cities that I'm sure you're working with, particularly leveraging the kind of green investments in single and multifamily homes that you're referring to, is that there's a dislocation in the market. Many of the homeowners actually have been longstanding owners of their home, but the market is not functioning. So they're not able to go borrow money to fix their roof or do some of the types of things. And you, along with the work that Finance New Orleans are coming in to provide, is a source of revenue of funds that actually allow them to do this. Have you been able to track, kind of on the basis of that kind of work, what the improvement has been in kind of re-instigating a functioning banking market for those communities that have been suffering in that way?
Yeah, I know Finance New Orleans, Bianca Brown there has been really active in working with lenders to, like you said, reinvigorate that market and make sure that folks have access to the capital they need to do those projects. So I very much think that that's Finance New Orleans' role, is to come up with these products that kind of move the market in a different direction. And we're excited to support that, and we're excited to see how that goes as we launch the program, aiming for the end of this year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Laura and Bo. And Laura, we look forward to hearing updates very soon on your product. For this last portion of our presentation, we want to welcome our partners, Damon Burns, who's President and CEO of Finance New Orleans, and Baron Badger, who's Chief Financial Officer for Finance New Orleans. Damon Burns is a New Orleans native with more than 10 years of experience in entrepreneurship, investment banking, and economic development. As I mentioned, he's currently serving as CEO of Finance New Orleans, an organization that has financed over 600 million of affordable housing and economic development projects in New Orleans. Byron Badger, currently serving as CFO for Finance New Orleans, has over a decade of banking experience. And prior to joining the Finance New Orleans organization, he served as Assistant Vice President of Business and Finance New Orleans at Dillard University. Thank you, Damon and Byron, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Alejandra, and hello to everyone again. This has been an excellent event. I'm just enjoying sitting in the background, listening to all the conversation. So I hope that you're enjoying it as well. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Finance New Orleans. You see on the screen, our motto is simple. We're trying to make New Orleans a better home. So all that we do is dedicated to moving New Orleans forward. The last conversation, and Laura just mentioned in her response, our job is to create opportunity where opportunity does not exist. And that's what we've been doing since the moment we were created back in 1978. But times have changed and we've had to evolve. So today I'm going to talk to you about our evolution. I'm going to talk a little bit about our past, some of the things that we're doing today, and then we're going to get into the future. Mr. Badger is going to talk to you about the future and what we have planned. So let's jump right into it. Next slide, please. So a little background about about Finance New Orleans. Actually, Finance New Orleans is a new name for us. We rebranded just a few weeks ago, and previously we were known as the Finance Authority of New Orleans. So that's still our official name, but we decided to rebrand so that we could have a better connection with the community. Less words to say when we talk about this and try to give our presentation and our elevator speech. But Finance New Orleans has been around since 1978. We've been around for over 40 years, and we were originally created to increase affordable housing and economic opportunities for residents. And we're served by, or we're governed by a 7-member board of trustees, which is appointed by the New Orleans City Council. So we also work very closely and under the leadership of Mayor Cantrell's office. We spend quite a bit of time in City Hall learning what the city's needs are and figuring out where we can add value and support to the community. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of our investment history. We've deployed over $650 million of capital into New Orleans, benefiting over 7,500 families. Most of our investments have been in single family, as you can tell by this chart. We've also made some multifamily investments and some other economic development investments, but primarily what we've been known for in New Orleans is providing home ownership opportunities. And Hurricane Katrina disrupted our ability to invest in the community. We lost over 90%, or I should say our asset base shrank by over 90%, almost overnight. And then right after Katrina happened, the Great Recession happened. And the Great Recession prevented us from rebuilding our capacity and continuing to invest in New Orleans. So it's been a long 15 years for us. We know firsthand what a climate event can do to an organization and a community. We're still living it today. And many, when we have conversations with stakeholders and others from around the country, we're learning that recovery of climate events just takes a long time. But despite the fact that it takes a long time, the community needs answers now. So what we've done is taken a look at what we've provided to the community over time and what we can do in the future. Next slide, please. So that brings us to today. We're creating a new vision for Finance New Orleans. And in order to create that new vision, we started in 2016 to ground ourselves in the problems the city is facing, namely sea level rise, projected sea level rise by 2100 is almost up to 12 feet. 51% of our renters are cost burden. We have a very high poverty rate that's been high for some time. There's no secret. And we're working every day to do what we can to reverse that trend. Additionally, energy poverty is a concern in New Orleans. Low-income households struggle to pay a decent rate on their utility bills. We have a very old housing stock, and that's a big part of the reason why we need to make the investments that Quantified Ventures talked about in their presentation. upgrading the building stock, making it more resilient, making it more resistant to climate events, and not just hurricanes or big climate events, but the ordinary rainstorm. So as we know here in New Orleans, one rainstorm, if it rains long enough in one spot, that can cause trouble for some of our neighborhoods. So we expect to continue living in New Orleans. We love New Orleans. So if we're going to live here, we're going to have to solve some of these problems. And that's what we've committed to do at Finance New Orleans. So next slide. And that begins with the commitment that our board has made. We as a staff have taken information to our board to let them know precisely where we are at this point in time and what we can do to be more effective in the community moving ahead. So we started by changing our mission statement. And simply what we've done is added climate resilience to our mission statement. So we're not just a finance authority anymore, we're a green finance authority, or a green bank, as some agencies may call it. I know we have some green bank representation on the call today in the audience. So we're a part of this movement of green financing authorities, where it's not just about providing the basic tools that a homeowner need or that a business need or a municipality may need, but it's also about providing them with the tools they need to equip themselves from environmental damage, from climate events, and just to have a more resilient community. So when disaster does strike, that we're able to come right back into our community and restart our lives and not have such long-term disruptions. So that's why we changed our mission, and everything we're doing moving ahead is designed to make New Orleans a more climate protected city. Next slide. Also, we've been working with our board to develop some long-term planning goals. We're working on finalizing these strategic goals by the end of this year, and we're going to announce them to the community and to the market at the beginning of next year. But we've identified 4 simple goals that we're going to focus on over the next 10 years. And those include using climate resilience to physically transform New Orleans. We all want to see our cities transform. We all want to see new things, new investments. Well, physical transformation is a lofty goal, but we think it's very worthy and it's necessary. And we can't stop until we see a physically transformed New Orleans. Also, we're using this as an opportunity or a chance to create economic opportunities, particularly for neighborhoods that have not participated in some of our previous economic cycles. Moving ahead, we need a more equitable, a more fair New Orleans. You heard Noel BA talk about equity. It's a part of their mission statement. It's a part of their tagline, equity and culture. So New Orleans has engagement from neighborhoods of all income levels, all backgrounds, all education backgrounds. Everybody is engaged and everybody deserves to participate in the growth that we expect to see over the next 10 years. So we're committed to bringing economic opportunity to our residents. Also, we want to build public wealth for community reinvestment. So a big part of providing those economic opportunities is having public wealth so that we can provide credit enhancement or provide financing products where the commercial lending market just isn't comfortable. They may not be comfortable yet. So we want to stay ahead of the curve, and we think we can build public wealth by staying ahead of the curve. Also, in order to accomplish all of these things, we need to have a modern organization. So we're going to focus on being agile and innovative. And that simply means we're going to be fast in our decisions. Sometimes it can be difficult for governments to move quickly as it relates to decision making. And some of that is necessary. And we're still going to adhere to what is necessary to maintain proper protection for all of our community. But we also want to be responsive. We want to make quick decisions, and we want to implement products and take away products when they aren't working. So our goal is to, if we're going to accomplish these things, we're going to have to think fast and move fast. Next slide. Here's some of the milestones that we've accomplished in 2020. In order for us to become this green finance authority and to create this type of impact we know we need in New Orleans, we've had to lay a lot of groundwork. We couldn't just jump right in. We went to the market, we talked to some investors, we talked to some stakeholders, and they all told us the same things. Go back, give us a plan, let us know how you're going to work with the city, how you're going to work with key public sector or private sector partners, and then we can talk about how we move this forward. So we've spent most of 2020 on Zoom, the quarantine. None of us expected the quarantine, but it's given us a lot of time to buckle down and and accomplish some of these goals. So we received a grant at the beginning of 2020 from C40 Cities and Quantified Ventures. They're both on the line now, and they've helped us to develop this plan. You heard about the Green Deal, and you heard about the environmental impact bonds. So a lot of our work has been focused on developing those aspects of the plan. We've also tried to be responsive to the community, despite the fact that we are ourselves recovering and don't have as many resources as we once had, but we're rebuilding. But still, we have to be there for the community. So we created a community support fund. Bianca Brown's our COO. She led that effort for us. She's on the line right now as well. But that is a fund that we see growing over time. And when we talk about building public wealth, our public wealth will go back into more loan products, but it will also go into our community support fund so that we can provide resources to the community in good and bad times. We've also created a partnership with the City of New Orleans and the Louisiana Housing Corporation. You heard Ellen Lee speak earlier about that new partnership. Well, it's simply what that has done is align local and state interests as it relates to developing affordable housing. We work on behalf of the City of New Orleans. The Louisiana Housing Corporation works on behalf of the entire state. So we're working very closely with that organization. Their director, Keith Cunningham, has been very willing to share ideas and help us develop a platform that can be scaled not only in New Orleans, greater New Orleans, but across the state and in other states as well. So we're trying to create a new model for local and state agency cooperation and sharing and investing of resources. So we got that deal approved in May, and just this past September, we were able to provide final approval to our first development projects that came from that partnership. So we're providing tax exemptions as well as tax exempt bonds and other incentives to developers that are building sustainable and affordable housing. That program is in its infancy, but we're very excited about it. The community is excited about it, and we feel that we have a lot to grow from. Also, we became a member of the American Green Bank Consortium, and we have many of those members on the line today. I see Alex, Carrie, and Gwen have joined us. And the American Green Bank Consortium now consists of 16 members. So it was 15, but Finance New Orleans made 16. And being a part of that group, we think will give us a quantum leap because we're sharing and comparing information with other green banks around the country. They're building out programs and products the same way that we are, and we're following their lead, and they've been very helpful in inviting us into that group. So all of these things that we've done this year are meant to build on the future. And I'm running a little bit over my time, so I'm going to pass it over to Byron Badger, our CFO, to talk about the future and how we put this new strategic plan into action.
Great. Thank you, Damon. Thank you, Alejandra, and thank everybody that's on the call. So our vision moving forward involves adding or focusing on 3 core areas of sustainable financing programs that will support the city's resilient strategy and help prepare us for these future climate shocks. The first core area is housing innovation. So this core service kind of looks at the financing of affordable and resilient housing that advances innovation and reduces energy burden for low and moderate income families. It'll also focus on strategies that will introduce new and innovative green technologies to the city. The second core service is green buildings. This involves an investment in commercial and public buildings, and through its design and construction and operation and overall life cycle, reduces or eliminates negative impacts or create positive impacts on our climate environment. This service will also look to create a small business resiliency through the development of some financial products targeted toward the restaurant and the hospitality industries, which we know are the lifelines of our economy here in the city. And then third, we have green infrastructure, which involves finance and water management or any other mechanism that helps absorb or mitigate flooding or absorb heat or reduce energy use and emissions. So this is our vision, but we've already started the work, as you We've seen in Quantified Ventures and C40's presentation, they've been helping us and we've been on the ground and we've already got this started. Next slide. So this slide shows our high level process flow of our new business model. We know that public capital alone cannot meet the resilience needs of the city. So we need to partner with capital providers to help match the capital supply with the overall demand. So overall, we're looking to capitalize this fund under multiple structures and sequences that could include an infusion of public money, grants. It can be some form of capital over time from a dedicated stream of income like pilot revenues, a bond issuance, and we're still exploring several others. But in working alongside our capital providers to leverage these dollars, these funds will help support our various property sectors, such as our single family, multifamily, and our green buildings and infrastructure components. And we'll use several tools, financing tools that can help us with this, such as green mortgages, pre-development loans, tax exemptions, green infrastructure loans, and renewable energy loans. Next slide. So the outcome of this model is set to achieve our targeted impacts that you've heard. Our targets is affordable and sustainable housing production, green job creation, stormwater mitigation, community awareness, green technology deployment, and the reduction of CO emissions. Next slide. So this kind of takes a look at the green technologies that will be deployed on the ground, kind of give you some insight of what we're looking at in terms of those technologies. One is energy efficiency retrofitting. This involves modifications of existing commercial buildings that may improve energy efficiency or decrease energy demand. There's hurricane resistant roofing. One example could be metal roofing, which is generally considered the best option for hurricane resistance. Electric vehicles. This involves financing options for cleaner cars, cleaner fuels, better transit to reduce pollution, but also create jobs in the process and create economic development at the same time. Permeable pavement. This helps establish a more natural balance of water and help reduce runoff by trapping water and releasing it slowly into the ground instead of allowing it to flow, which helps with pollution as well. Solar energy production and storage. This is investing in technologies that can capture electricity, store it, and some other form of electricity or energy, and then release it for use when needed. And then finally, we have rain barrels and gardens. And so this technology helps capture water from the roof and hold on to it for later use, and also balances out that water consumption as well. Next slide. So this, you've seen the milestones that we've achieved over the past year. We've made some significant progress, as Mr. Burns pointed out. And so we'll continue working to achieve our marks and work to develop innovative financing strategies and work with Quantified Ventures and C40 and the different agencies to tackle this resilient housing and economic development. This shows some of our key action plan items going into 2021. Early January, we're looking to launch our Green Mortgage Home Ownership Program. At the same time, we'll be planning to launch our New Orleans Green Deal with the city and local agencies. We'll be targeting our focus on reestablishing our presence in the bond market in early second quarter. We'll be ready to finance our demo projects for the green buildings and the infrastructure pipeline that we had in July. And then finally, in third quarter, we'll be looking to launch our Housing Innovation Fund. Next slide. So to round this out, we're targeting a $1 billion investment in our community to fund these innovative green initiatives and programs over the next 10 years. This will allow us to stimulate the development of this new green industry around building and solving our resilient issues, our climate issues and challenges, but ultimately making New Orleans a better home and a better future for generations to come. So look forward to more insight to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Byron and Damon, for your wonderful presentation. We have a brief section to have a conversation, and then we'll move to Q&A.
Great. Well, just because we have such a short period of time, you know, one of the things that both Byron and Damon you've talked about are some of the tools that you have already initiated and will initiate. And I think what might be really interesting is, and I've had the benefit of seeing how some of these types of tools in terms of the bonding and the tax exempt status have really fueled development in other cities like Kansas City and Cincinnati. Can you talk a little bit about what your expectations are now and how you can position Finance New Orleans to really be a partner with those entities that are looking to do development, whether it be, you know, residential, corporate, or industrial?
So we've, you know, first thing we've had to do, Bo, is work hand in hand with the community to figure out where all the pain points are, what the true needs are, and where the resources lie. So we can't do everything at Finance New Orleans, and we need good partners. Of course, NOLA VA, we have many others that are part of that Green Deal and not a part of that Green Deal. So that was the first thing we had to do. And the second thing that we've done is started to build a platform that is open in nature, that allows for ideas to come in, allows us as an agency to evaluate those ideas, and be flexible at the same time with the community. So we started out with local developers, and I mentioned we've completed our first 2 projects, or at least we're in the process of completing our first 2 projects. And that program for developers provides them with reliable access to public dollars, reliable access to public capital that is needed in order to move some of these critical projects forward. So we see the evolution of that platform for developers, also working for homeowners, also working for business owners, working for startups who are looking to develop innovative concepts or maybe bring green manufacturing to New Orleans. This platform will be open and available for the entire community of investors and developers to make the improvements they need in New Orleans.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again. We have now approached the section in which we're going to open it up for Q&A from the public. We have a couple of questions already here. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I apologize. There's a an additional discussion between Norman, Damon, and Boca. My apologies. So we do have this section before the Q&A.
So Alejandra and Bo, Norman, we're running short on time. Do y'all want to jump into the Q&A so we can give the audience a chance to participate?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right, so we already have a couple of questions here. This is directed to Laura. How does the QC investor recover their investment? And so is it true P&I repayments or via PPA purchase options? This is directed to Laura.
Yeah, so to be clear, we're not incorporating opportunity zones yet at this time, although I see from Norman's presentation, you know, some opportunities to plug in, especially in some of the later sectors that Finance New Orleans is building out. In terms of, you know, recovering the investment for, you know, a homeowner's improvements, we're looking at a couple of different ways to do that. But for folks who are familiar with the mortgage market, Finance New Orleans has to stay competitive with some of the other regional products that are out there that include like a forgivable second mortgage. So we are looking at a couple of different options, including P&I, including a non-amortizing due on sale option. I also mentioned some services fees. So we're looking at a way to collect essentially a P&I payment on a regular basis, like through a utility fee. So we're looking at a couple of different options there to recoup, you know, Finance New Orleans investment. And then we're looking as we, build out some of the different mechanisms. Like I said, once Finance New Orleans is able to have enough secure revenue to bond, as Damon mentioned, do some of those environmental impact bonds or green bonds, then we would, probably think about some kind of a P&I schedule. So I hope that answers the question. I'm happy to type more into the chat if there are follow-up questions.
Thank you, Laura. I have another question here directed to Byron. Without being a major private investor, how can individuals invested in seeing their community develop resilient personally can invest? I hear a lot of mention of already owned housing green renovations. What is the timeline for these programs to be available to all, or do they already exist? So I guess it's two questions. How can they individuals personally invest, and then the housing green renovations?
Yes, so one of the things we're exploring as we look at these different bond options, especially the environmental impact bond, is allowing access in smaller denominations of purchasing of these bonds, $500 to $1,000 denominations. So that's one of the things one of the ways that invest in the community and then invest in green is by the ability to buy or purchase these smaller denomination bonds. In terms of the product for non homeowners, the Green Mortgage Program will cover everyone. And so you will be able, that program will be starting in January. And so that won't just be for existing homeowners, that will be for new homeowners and existing as well. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Now I have an opportunity zone related question. I think Bo can help us answer this. How does a accredited investor opportunity zone fund work? Most accredited investors don't have a capital gains to shelter.
Right. So it's a good question. I saw it when it came up. There are a couple of ways to answer that. And what Byron was describing is one effort where they are creating a mechanism that allows for people who are buying at smaller amounts, and typically they're doing that specifically to reach non-accredited investors and give them that opportunity. There are places around the country, and Louisiana and New Orleans may not be there yet, but there are same state funds that are being created specifically for opportunity zones that allow for non-accredited investors. It should also be noted that even in the larger funds that we're talking about, those larger funds do allow for a limited number of non-accredited investors to also participate, but we're looking for strategies that allow for a greater number of people to do so. What Byron already discussed, and possibly Laura is working directly on that as well, so they may be able to add to this question, but it is possible. Now, there's a secondary aspect of your question, which is, what do you do if you don't have capital gains, right? And that is actually not a solvable issue. You do have to have capital gains to take advantage of the program, but a lot of people underestimate all the various ways they can create capital gains. It isn't just from the sale of a house or the sale of a business. It's from the sale of stock. It could be sale from memorabilia. It could be the sale of a classic car or some other assets. All the assets that actually create gains could be eligible. And so part of what we've tried to do, and we've done this with NOLA BA specifically, is to have more work, community-oriented seminars to educate people about the range of assets that actually could create those gains. I'll pause just to see if Byron or Laura or anyone wanted to add anything to that answer.
All right, we're good. Thank you both for that answer. And to your comment, we will be hosting a Community Opportunity Zone event later in the year, so stay tuned for that. We have time for one last question, and this is directed to Norman. Could you please elaborate on the difference between the perception of the community and the data analysis? And I'm happy to jump in and answer that, provide a couple of comments, Norman, if you want to.
I think that the best way to approach it is when you deal with perception, it's what's been in the ecosystem or what's been reported relative to the community. And that perception has been the opinion, and what we're dealing in New Orleans East was been the opinion of commercial brokers that were not directing their clientele to New Orleans East. And so to override that perception, we had to anchor in data. And I think the key point for me is the data is the data. The way to validate the data, not just from our source with Buxton, but from other points, is how we try to counteract that perception. And so for that New Orleans East corridor specifically, the residents are realize that, you know, the perception of crime that is overarching in New Orleans East, over and abundant in other areas is not true. So we anchored police reports and come back with our strategy to deal with crime. The perception of the buying capacity in New Orleans East. We utilized Buxton, and Buxton gave us what the retail leakage was in New Orleans East and what the buying power is in New Orleans East. And so I think that is the key component for us as we market. We have to be able to market with what's real. And our ability to utilize a third party to validate what is real was important, because the perceptions were not being validated with anybody's data. It was just an overriding opinion that had not been validated. So I think it's difficult to at some point, what was going to override all perception is activity. And once we show a retailer coming back into that spot, then it'll be clear that the things that we've done to market have override that perception, because the opportunity for investment and profit is there.
Thank you, Norman. I just want to add that the use of data has been an absolute game changer when we have conversations with different stakeholders from the community, but also with brokers and also with the different brands that we want to attract. There's nothing like showing data to dismantle biases for certain communities. So with that, we have run out of time. This has been a great conversation. We want to thank you again for your time today. We hope and we trust that this was valuable information, and we want to invite you to keep in touch with us. We do have more webinars like this coming up in the future, and other programming to address opportunity zones. If you want to reach out to us, make sure to visit financenola.org and nolava.org. You will find our contact information there. And again, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And this concludes our programming.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.